The problem with being the architect of the most impenetrable fortress in the known universe, Admiral Vox Taravan said with a sigh that whistled through his 3 breathing spiracles, is that everyone wants to test it. I flicked my secondary eye membranes in what my species considers the equivalent of an eye roll. Here we go again. The Admiral's favorite topic, his own genius. My name is Zorax Peluvian, Senior Defense Analyst for the Galactic Hegemony's Impervious Systems Division. For 12 cycles, I have served under Admiral Taravan, listening to him boast about the quantum barrier that surrounds our homeworld of Taliskar, the barrier that has never been breached, the barrier that has repelled invasions from the Vorix Armada, the Skalan Horde, and even the notorious mech-droids of Nexus 9. I assume you are referring to the delegation arriving tomorrow, I asked, pretending I hadn't already memorized every detail about our upcoming visitors. Not just any delegation, Analyst Peluvian. The Admiral's dorsal spines flared with excitement. Humans. The way he said it like he was announcing a particularly contagious fungal infection made my scales ripple with amusement. First contact with a previously unknown species? How quaint, I replied, unable to keep the sarcasm from dripping into my voice modulators. And they pose a threat to the quantum barrier, because Admiral Taravan spread his forearms wide, a gesture he often used when explaining something he considered painfully obvious. They don't. That's the beauty of it. We finally get to showcase our superiority to a species so primitive they have barely mastered interstellar travel. I checked my datapad. Their civilization is only 10,000 years old. They achieved spaceflight less than 500 years ago. Their primary weapons systems still use projectiles. I couldn't help but chuckle at this last part. Precisely. The Admiral slapped his primary hands together, creating that irritating clicking sound I'd grown to despise. They are babies, cosmic infants, yet the Council insists we treat them with diplomatic courtesy. Perhaps the Council sees potential in them, I suggested, more to be contrary than out of any actual belief. From the data I'd reviewed, humans were remarkably unremarkable. Short-lived, physically weak, and technologically primitive. Their only notable characteristic was their surprisingly rapid expansion across their local star cluster. Potential. Ha! Admiral Taravan's laugh sounded like gravel in a food processor. The most advanced ship in their fleet couldn't even dent the barrier's outer shell. So-called ambassadors are arriving in a vessel that uses combustion propulsion. Peluvian. Combustion. I nodded dutifully. Very amusing, Admiral. Will you be greeting them personally? Naturally. The Council has ordered a full reception. Apparently these humans consider personal interaction important in their diplomatic protocols. He flicked a dismissive gesture with his tertiary arm. Primitive emotionality. Nevertheless, I expect you to join the welcome committee. Your analytical perspective might prove useful. Of course, Admiral. I bowed slightly, my cranial ridge lowering in the traditional gesture of compliance. I look forward to observing these humans up close. What I didn't say was that I was genuinely curious. In my 12 cycles of service, I'd never witnessed a first contact. Most species in the galactic hegemony had been interacting for millennia. A truly new perspective might be refreshing. Excellent. Dismissed. Analyst. The Admiral turned his attention back to the massive holographic display showing the barrier's energy readings, a habit he indulged in hourly, as though expecting the impenetrable to suddenly become penetrable. I left his chamber and made my way through the Central Command Complex, a structure as imposing and excessive as the Admiral's ego. Built from indestructible quantum-locked alloys and powered by 3 artificial suns, the complex served as both the control center for the quantum barrier and the diplomatic heart of Taliskar. My personal quarters were located in the Analyst's Wing, a modest space by Taliskarian standards, but still lavish compared to the accommodations of most species. I settled onto my resting platform and vocally commanded my personal terminal to display all available information on humans. Accessing Xenobiological Database. My terminal chimed. Species human. Origin planet Earth, Sol system. Biped mammals with bilateral symmetry. Average lifespan 100 Earth years. Notable characteristics: exceptional pattern recognition, high adaptability, unusual psychological resilience. The images that followed showed creatures that looked almost comically simple. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, no protective exoskeleton, No secondary limbs, no specialized appendages, just soft, vulnerable skin in various shades of pink, brown, and black. Their faces featured two forward-facing eyes, a protruding nasal structure, and a single mouth with blunt teeth. How such defenseless creatures had survived long enough to achieve spaceflight was genuinely puzzling. I continued scrolling through the data. Most of it was standard first contact information, atmosphere requirements, nutritional needs, basic cultural notes. Nothing particularly interesting until I reached a section labeled Military History. Unusual propensity for intraspecies conflict. I read aloud, human history marked by continuous warfare between competing factions. Technological development primarily driven by military necessity. Note, despite their technological limitations, humans display unconventional problem-solving approaches during conflict situations. That was intriguing. A species that fought itself constantly would naturally develop unique combat perspectives. Still, without advanced technology, what threat could they possibly pose? My contemplation was interrupted by a notification ping. Attention all senior staff. The human delegation will be arriving 12 hours ahead of schedule. Prepare for reception at Docking Bay 7 at 0800 hours. 12 hours early? That was unexpected. Most species adhered strictly to diplomatic timetables. I sent a quick acknowledgement and settled in for a rest cycle. Tomorrow would be, if nothing else, a break from routine. I arrived at Docking Bay 7 precisely on time, to find Admiral Taravan already waiting, surrounded by his usual entourage of sycophants and security drones. He acknowledged my presence with the barest flick of his primary eyes. Analyst Peluvian, right on time. The human vessel has entered our system and will dock within moments. I took my place in the reception line between Science Director Kalaum and Trade Minister Vexa. Both were vibrating with the subtle frequencies of excitement common to our species when confronted with novelty. Have you reviewed the biological data? Director Kalaum asked me, her voice pitched at a private frequency. Briefly, I admitted. They seem underwhelming. Don't be deceived by appearances, she replied. Their neural structures show fascinating complexity, and their adaptive capabilities are remarkable for such a young species. Before I could respond, a low rumble announced the arrival of the human ship. We all turned our attention to the massive airlock as it cycled open, revealing what had to be the most inelegant spacecraft I'd ever witnessed. The human vessel was bulky, asymmetrical, and covered in what appeared to be improvised armor plating. Unlike our sleek biomimetic designs, their ship looked as though it had been assembled by a particularly unimaginative child using mismatched construction materials. Various protrusions, antennas, sensors, and what I assumed were weapons systems jutted out at awkward angles. The hull bore scorch marks and impact dents, suggesting it had seen combat or at minimum hazardous conditions. Great galaxies, Trade Minister Vexa muttered. They actually made it here in that. Admiral Taravan's dorsal spines flattened in what I recognized as barely concealed contempt. Evidently their engineering is as primitive as their weaponry. The docking procedure took nearly twice as long as standard protocol, with the human ship requiring multiple adjustments to align properly with our docking mechanisms. Finally, with a series of clanks and hisses that made several of our more sensitive staff members flinch, the connection was complete. A moment of tense silence followed. Then, with a pneumatic whoosh, the human ship's airlock opened. The first thing that struck me was the smell, an alien cocktail of unfamiliar biologicals, synthetic materials, and something else I couldn't identify. Not unpleasant, but definitely foreign. Then came the humans themselves. They were smaller than I'd expected. The lead figure stood perhaps 2/3 my height, though they carried themselves with surprising confidence. There were 5 of them, each wearing what appeared to be standardized attire, dark blue garments with various insignias and decorations. Some form of uniform, I presumed. The lead human stepped forward and performed an odd gesture, bending slightly at the waist while maintaining eye contact with Admiral Taravan. "Greetings from Earth and the United Human Alliance," the creature said, its voice surprisingly clear through our translation systems. "I am Ambassador Talia Mercer. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for your hospitality and look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our peoples." Admiral Taravan performed the traditional Telescarian welcome gesture, all 4 arms extended, palms upward. "Welcome to Telescar, Ambassador Mercer. I am Admiral Vox Taravan, military commander and chief architect of the quantum barrier. On behalf of the galactic hegemony, I extend greetings and safe harbor. The formalities continued as each member of both delegations was introduced. I observed the humans carefully, noting their varied physical characteristics, different skin tones, different facial structures, different hair patterns. Such diversity within a single species was unusual but not unprecedented. When my turn came, I stepped forward. Zirax Peluvian, senior defense analyst, welcome to our world. The human called Mercer turned her attention to me, and I experienced an unexpected sensation. Her eyes, dark brown in color, seemed to be evaluating me, not just looking, but seeing. For a brief moment I felt as though this small, fragile creature was cataloging my strengths, weaknesses, and potential threats. "Thank you, Analyst Peluvian," she said, her mouth forming what I recognized from my research as a smile. "I look forward to learning about your defense systems. My government is particularly interested in your quantum barrier technology." Admiral Taravan made a sound that our translation systems wisely did not interpret. "I'm sure you are, Ambassador. However, the barrier specifications are, naturally, classified. We will be happy to provide a general overview during your tour." "Of course," Mercer replied smoothly. "We understand security concerns. We have similar protocols for our own defensive technologies." The Admiral's tertiary eyes blinked in what I recognized as suppressed amusement. "Yes, well, shall we proceed to the diplomatic quarters? We have prepared accommodations according to your biological specifications." As we escorted the humans through the central command complex, I found myself walking alongside a human male who had been introduced as Dr. Liam Khatri, their science officer. "Impressive facility," he remarked, gazing up at the vaulted ceilings of the main corridor. "The structural engineering alone must have been a challenge." "The complex was designed to withstand any known form of attack," I replied. "Its foundations extend 3 kilometers below the planet's surface, and the materials used in its construction can resist temperatures equivalent to a star's core." "Fascinating," Dr. Khatri said, and again I experienced that strange sensation of being analyzed rather than merely observed. "On Earth we have a saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall." "I'm not familiar with that expression," I admitted. "It means that impressive size often comes with impressive vulnerabilities," he explained. I felt my spine stiffen involuntarily. "I assure you, Dr. Khatri, the complex has no vulnerabilities." His face formed the human smile gesture. "Everything has vulnerabilities, Analyst Peluvian. The trick is finding them before someone else does." Before I could formulate a response, we arrived at the diplomatic quarters, a series of chambers specifically designed to accommodate various species' biological needs. The humans were shown to their assigned spaces, and our delegation withdrew to allow them time to acclimate. As soon as we were out of earshot, Admiral Taravan turned to me, his expression one of undisguised contempt. "Did you see their ship? Primitive doesn't begin to describe it. And they have the audacity to express interest in the barrier technology. They seem more observant than I expected," I ventured. The Admiral dismissed my comment with a flick of his secondary arm. "Curiosity is not capability, Analyst. They can observe all they want. Understanding is beyond them." Science Director Kaluam joined our conversation. "I wouldn't underestimate them, Admiral. Their neural patterns suggest significant problem-solving abilities. Solving problems and breaching the most advanced defensive system in the galaxy are rather different challenges." "Director," the Admiral replied dryly. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual security matters to attend to." "Analyst Peluvian, you will escort the humans on their tour of the non-restricted areas in 2 hours. Keep them entertained." With that, he strode away, leaving me wondering why I'd been assigned babysitting duty. I turned to Director Kaluam, who offered a sympathetic vibration. "He's concerned," she said quietly. "About humans?" I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. "About the unknown," she clarified. "For all our data, we know very little about how they think." 2 hours later, I found myself leading the human delegation through the public sections of the complex. Ambassador Mercer and her team seemed genuinely interested in everything: the architecture, the technology, even the mundane details of our daily operations. "This central atrium is magnificent," Mercer commented as we entered the vast open space at the heart of the complex. Above us, the three artificial suns that powered our facilities orbited in their carefully calculated paths, bathing everything in warm, golden light. The way you have harnessed stars for power is impressive. Miniaturized stars, I corrected, each containing the energy equivalent of a yellow dwarf, but controlled at the quantum level. Dr. Khatri whistled, a sound I found both strange and somehow expressive. That's quite the achievement. Our fusion reactors are still in their early stages of development. Another human, Security Chief Jackson, had been silent for most of the tour. Now he spoke, his voice deeper than his companions. What happens if control fails? I blinked all four eyes in succession. A gesture of confidence. Impossible. The containment fields are generated by the quantum barrier itself. The same technology that protects our planet ensures the stars remain stable. Interesting, Jackson said, his expression unreadable to my alien perceptions. So the defense system and the power system are interdependent. I immediately regretted sharing that detail. To a limited extent, there are redundancies. Ambassador Mercer smoothly changed the subject. We understand your civilization has existed for over 50,000 years. That's extraordinary from our perspective. 53,422 years since our first interstellar voyage, I confirmed, grateful for the shift in conversation. Though the quantum barrier is a relatively recent development, only about 2,000 years old. What necessitated such a powerful defense system? Dr. Khatri asked. I hesitated, unsure how much historical context to provide. The galaxy can be hostile. Several aggressive species attempted to claim Taliskar due to its strategic location and resources. After the Third Incursion War, our leaders decided a permanent solution was required. And now no one can get in without your permission. Mercer observed. Precisely, I said, allowing a note of pride to enter my voice. The barrier can be selectively permeated for authorized vessels, as you experienced during your arrival. Otherwise, it is completely impenetrable. Nothing is completely impenetrable, Security Chief Jackson muttered, almost too quietly for my translator to catch. I pretended not to hear him. The tour continued through various public facilities, communal gathering spaces, information repositories, cultural exhibits designed to showcase Tuluskarian achievements. Throughout, the humans asked intelligent, if sometimes oddly specific questions. They seemed particularly interested in our power distribution systems, atmospheric controls, and communication networks. By the time we reached the observation deck overlooking the barrier control center, I was beginning to understand Admiral Taravin's discomfort. While the humans were unfailingly polite, there was something probing about their interest. This is as close as visitors are permitted to the actual control systems, I explained as we gazed down at the bustling activity below. Hundreds of my fellow Taliskarians moved with purpose among the complex array of terminals and holographic displays that monitored and maintained the barrier. Impressive operation, Ambassador Mercer commented. How many personnel are required to maintain the barrier? Approximately 12,000, working in rotating shifts, I replied. Dr. Khatri frowned slightly. That seems inefficient. No automation? Some systems are automated, I acknowledged. But our philosophy holds that critical defense infrastructure should always have organic oversight. Machines can be hacked or reprogrammed. Loyal citizens cannot, can't they? The question came from a previously quiet human, communications specialist Patel. History suggests otherwise. An uncomfortable silence followed this remark. Ambassador Mercer cleared her throat. What my colleague means is that on our world, we have learned that both technological and organic systems have their vulnerabilities. We are still working to find the optimal balance. The hegemony found that balance 2,000 years ago, Ambassador, I replied stiffly. The barrier has never failed. Never? Security Chief Jackson raised an eyebrow. Not even a minor breach? Never, I confirmed, though something about his persistent questioning made my scales itch. We completed the tour at the diplomatic dining hall, where a carefully researched meal compatible with human biology awaited them. As we parted ways, Ambassador Mercer extended her hand toward me, a human greeting gesture I'd read about. After a moment's hesitation, I extended my primary right hand and allowed her to grasp it briefly. Her skin was warmer than expected, and softer. Thank you for the informative tour, Analyst Peluvian, she said, We look forward to tomorrow's demonstrations. Demonstrations? I blinked in confusion. Admiral Taravan has arranged a showcase of your defensive capabilities, she explained. Did he not inform you? He must have overlooked it, I admitted, suddenly anxious. Public demonstrations of the barrier were rare and typically involved significant preparation. What was the Admiral planning? Well, I'm sure it will be enlightening, Mercer said with another of those enigmatic smiles. Until tomorrow. I reported directly to Admiral Taravan after leaving the humans, finding him in his private command center surrounded by holographic displays showing various angles of the human ship. Peluvian. How are our guests settling in? He asked without looking up. Comfortably, Admiral. They mentioned something about demonstrations scheduled for tomorrow. Yes. He waved a dismissive hand. Nothing elaborate. A simple power fluctuation test to show them the barrier's resilience. Standard protocol for new diplomatic contacts. That wasn't entirely true, and we both knew it. Standard protocol involved formal presentations and historical briefings, not actual system tests. But I knew better than to question the Admiral's decisions directly. They seemed particularly interested in our power systems and security protocols, I noted instead. This caught his attention, his primary eyes fixed on me. But did they? And what exactly did you tell them? Only publicly available information, Admiral. Though they ask unusual questions, he made a dismissive sound. Primitive curiosity. They are like children seeing advanced technology for the first time. He returned his attention to the displays. Speaking of their technology, our scans of their vessel have revealed some peculiarities. I moved closer to examine the holographic readouts. What kind of peculiarities? Their propulsion system is indeed the primitive combustion type we expected, but there are energy signatures we can't quite identify. And their hull material, it's not registering properly on our scanners. That was odd. Our scanning technology could identify virtually any known substance in the galaxy. Could it be a new alloy? Possibly. The Admiral sounded annoyed rather than concerned. More likely our systems simply aren't calibrated for such outdated materials. In any case, I have ordered a comprehensive analysis. We will know more by morning. Do you suspect some kind of deception? I asked, suddenly alert. Admiral Taravan laughed a harsh, grating sound. Deception? From humans? What could they possibly hope to achieve? No, Peluvian, this is simple scientific curiosity. Know your enemy, even when they pose no threat. I nodded, though something continued to nag at my consciousness. Will you require my presence at tomorrow's demonstration? Naturally. About 900 hours at the Western Observation Platform. We will show our guests exactly why the Talaskarian quantum barrier has never been breached. He flicked all four of his hands in the formal dismissal gesture. That will be all, analyst. I returned to my quarters troubled by thoughts I couldn't quite articulate. The humans were undoubtedly primitive by our standards, yet their questions had been pointed, specific, almost as if they already knew what to ask about. I accessed my terminal again, this time requesting historical data on first contacts with previously unknown species. As I scrolled through the archives, a pattern began to emerge. Species that appeared technologically inferior often possessed unexpected advantages, evolutionary adaptations, unique resources, or simply different approaches to problem solving. One case in particular caught my attention: the Nivorians, an aquatic species whose apparent lack of advanced weaponry had led the Skalan horde to attempt an invasion of their homeworld. The Skalans had never returned, and the Nivorians now controlled an expanding territory of 17 systems. The official record attributed this to unanticipated environmental defenses, but provided no details. Curious, I tried to access the classified addendum only to receive a security clearance denial. That was strange. My clearance level should have been sufficient for historical data over a century old. I tried a different approach, searching instead for trade agreements with the Nivorians. These were public record and might provide indirect insights. What I found was even more puzzling. There were none. The galactic hegemony, which maintained diplomatic and trade relations with over 400 species, had exactly zero formal agreements with the Nivorians. They existed in a state of neither war nor peace with us. Simply isolation. A notification chime interrupted my research. All senior staff security alert level raised to cautionary. Increased monitoring of diplomatic visitors in effect immediately. Authorization Admiral Taravan. Cautionary level was unusual but not unprecedented during first contact situations. Still, combined with my other observations, it heightened my sense that something wasn't quite right. I attempted to access the security alert details, but again encountered a clearance denial. Now that was definitely abnormal. As senior defense analyst, I should have been automatically included in all security briefings. I considered contacting the Admiral directly but decided against it. If he had deliberately excluded me, questioning him would only create tension. Better to wait until morning and observe the situation firsthand. I settled into my rest cycle, but sleep eluded me. My mind kept returning to the humans, to Ambassador Mercer's evaluating gaze, to Dr. Khatri's pointed questions about vulnerabilities, to Security Chief Jackson's assertion that nothing was completely impenetrable. When my alarm signaled the start of the new cycle, I rose feeling unusually alert despite my lack of rest. I performed my morning ablutions with extra care, sensing that the day ahead might be more significant than a simple diplomatic demonstration. The Western observation platform was already crowded when I arrived. In addition to Admiral Taravan and his usual entourage, several council members were present, including High Counselor Zevix herself. The human delegation stood near the viewing portal, engaged in quiet conversation. Analyst Peluvian. The Admiral beckoned me over. Right on time. Our demonstration will begin shortly. I trust you will help ensure our guests understand the technical aspects. Of course, Admiral. I bowed respectfully to the assembled dignitaries before turning to the humans. Good morning, Ambassador Mercer. I hope your accommodations were satisfactory. More than satisfactory, thank you. She smiled, but I noticed her eyes continually scanning the room, taking in details. We are looking forward to today's demonstration. Admiral Taravan stepped forward, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Distinguished visitors, honored council members. Today we have the privilege of demonstrating the unparalleled security provided by the quantum barrier. For over 2,000 years, this marvel of Taliskarian engineering has protected our homeworld from all external threats. He gestured grandly toward the viewing portal, beyond which the swirling energies of the barrier were visible as a faint iridescent shimmer surrounding the planet. What you are witnessing is merely the visual manifestation of a complex quantum field that exists simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. The barrier can detect, analyze, and neutralize any unauthorized object attempting to penetrate our atmosphere. Dr. Khatri leaned forward, clearly intrigued. How does it distinguish between authorized and unauthorized objects? An excellent question. The Admiral seemed pleased by the human's interest. Each authorized vessel is provided with a quantum signature key that temporarily aligns its molecular structure with the barrier's permissible frequency ranges. Fascinating, Dr. Khatri murmured. And if a ship attempted entry without such a key, Admiral Taravan's mouthparts formed what I recognized as his version of a smile. Perhaps a demonstration would be more effective than an explanation. With the Council's permission, High Counselor Zevix inclined her head in assent. The Admiral activated his command interface, and a holographic display appeared before us, showing a small drone being launched from a nearby orbital platform. This drone has been programmed to approach the barrier as if it were an invasive craft, he explained. Observe. We watched as the drone accelerated toward the planet. As it neared the barrier's perimeter, a barely perceptible ripple passed through the iridescent field. Then, without warning or apparent effort, the drone simply disintegrated. One moment it existed, the next it was reduced to its component atoms, dispersed harmlessly into space. The barrier doesn't just repel, Admiral Taravan said with evident satisfaction. It unmakes. No explosion, no debris, no collateral damage. Just the elegant neutralization of a threat. I glanced at the humans, curious about their reaction. Security Chief Jackson's face remained impassive, but his eyes had narrowed slightly. Dr. Khatri was rapidly tapping something into a small device, taking notes. I presume Ambassador Mercer's expression was one of polite interest, but I detected a slight tension in her posture. Impressive, she said. May I ask what would happen if multiple threats approached simultaneously? Does the barrier have finite processing capability? I tensed at the question. It was dangerously close to classified information. But Admiral Taravan merely laughed. The barrier's processing capability is, for all practical purposes, unlimited, Ambassador. It has successfully repelled coordinated attacks from armadas numbering in the thousands. A simple matter of quantum computation. Each particle in the barrier field is a processor. And power requirements? This from communications specialist Patel. Such a system must consume enormous energy. Hence the 3 artificial suns you observed yesterday, the Admiral replied. But the system is remarkably efficient. The barrier actually harvests a percentage of the energy from neutralized threats, creating a partial feedback loop. The technical discussion continued for some time, with the humans asking increasingly specific questions and Admiral Taravan providing answers that skirted the edge of classified information. I remained silent, growing more uneasy by the moment. The Admiral was revealing far more than standard protocol dictated, seemingly caught up in his own pride and the humans' apparent admiration. Finally, High Counselor Zevix intervened. Perhaps our guests would appreciate a tour of the orbital defense platforms. They provide an excellent view of the barrier from space. An excellent suggestion, High Counselor, Ambassador Mercer said smoothly. If it wouldn't be an imposition. Not at all, Admiral Taravan assured her. I have already arranged for a shuttle. Analyst Peluvian will accompany you along with a standard security detail. And just like that, I found myself assigned to escort duty once again. As we made our way to the shuttle bay, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was unfolding, something beyond a simple diplomatic exchange. The humans whispered among themselves as we boarded the shuttle, their expressions serious. When they noticed me watching, Ambassador Mercer offered another of her enigmatic smiles. Your Admiral is very proud of your defenses, she observed as the shuttle launched. With good reason, I replied automatically. The barrier has never failed. So you have mentioned. She paused, studying me with those unsettlingly perceptive eyes. Tell me, Analyst Peluvian, what do you think would happen if it did fail? The question caught me completely off guard. That's impossible. Humor me, she insisted gently. As a thought experiment, what contingencies exist? I should have deflected the question or reported her inappropriate curiosity to the security detail. Instead, I found myself considering her questions seriously. There are no contingencies, I admitted finally. There's never been a need. Something flickered across her face, concern. Pity? I couldn't interpret the expression. That's unfortunate, she said quietly. Before I could ask what she meant, the shuttle pilot announced our approach to the orbital platform. Through the viewport, I could see the massive structure looming ahead, one of 12 identical platforms spaced equidistantly around Taliscar's orbit, each housing defensive weapons systems that, though formidable, were considered secondary to the barrier itself. As we docked, my communication device chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Taravan. Analyst, return to the Central Command Complex immediately. Bring the human delegation with you. Priority Alpha. Priority Alpha? That was reserved for imminent threats or system-critical events. My blood ran cold. Ambassador, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There's been a change of plans. We are being recalled to the surface. She exchanged glances with her team, some unspoken communication passing between them. Is there a problem, Analyst Peluvian? I'm not sure, I admitted. But we need to return immediately. As we reboarded the shuttle, I noticed Security Chief Jackson whispering something to Dr. Khatri, who nodded grimly. The atmosphere had shifted from diplomatic curiosity to something far more tense. The return journey felt agonizingly slow, though in reality it took only minutes. As we approached the planet, I gazed out at the barrier, searching for any visible anomaly. The iridescent field appeared normal, its quantum energies flowing in their usual patterns. Yet when we landed, the docking bay was in chaos. Security personnel rushed about, checking identification and sealing access points. Admiral Taravan himself was waiting, his normally immaculate scales disheveled, his eyes darting nervously. What's happening? I asked as we disembarked. The impossible, he hissed, gesturing for us to follow him to a private briefing room. Once inside, with the doors securely locked, he activated a holographic display showing the barrier's status. I stared in disbelief at what I saw. Across the northern hemisphere, fluctuating patches of instability disrupted the barrier's normally seamless field. The quantum harmonics were destabilizing, creating temporary gaps that, while small, represented the first failure in the system's 2,000-year history. How is this possible? I whispered. Admiral Taravan turned to face the humans, his posture radiating accusation. Perhaps our guest could answer that question. Ambassador Mercer's expression remained calm, almost serene. I assume you are suggesting human involvement in whatever is happening to your barrier. Our sensors detected unusual energy signatures emanating from your vessel just before the fluctuations began. The Admiral snarled, "Explain yourselves." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, to my astonishment, Ambassador Mercer began to laugh, a soft, almost musical sound that nevertheless sent chills down my spine. "Admiral Taravan," she said when her laughter subsided, "do you know why humans have survived despite being, as you put it, cosmically young?" The Admiral's scales flared in anger. "This is not the time for philosophical discussions, Ambassador." "On the contrary," she replied, her voice hardening. "It's precisely the time. You see, we humans have a particular talent, one that served us well as we have ventured into the stars." "And what talent is that?" I found myself asking. She turned to me, and in her eyes I saw not the diplomatic courtesy of before, but something else, something calculating and ancient. "We knock before we enter, and if no one answers, we find another way in." The silence that followed Ambassador Mercer's statement was absolute. Even Admiral Taravan seemed momentarily stunned into speechlessness, his forearms frozen in mid-gesture. "You," he finally sputtered, "you are responsible for this?" Ambassador Mercer shrugged, a casual human gesture that seemed wildly inappropriate given the circumstances. "Consider it a gentle tap on your supposedly impenetrable door." I stared at her in disbelief. The humans had somehow compromised the quantum barrier, the same barrier that had repelled the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It was inconceivable. "Impossible," Admiral Taravan declared, echoing my thoughts. "Your primitive technology couldn't possibly affect our quantum systems." Security Chief Jackson stepped forward, his previously stoic expression replaced by something more predatory. "Your first mistake, Admiral, was assuming our technology is primitive just because our ship looks primitive." Dr. Khatri nodded. "Your second mistake was explaining exactly how your defenses work. Quantum signature keys that align molecular structure with permissible frequency ranges. That's practically an instruction manual for bypassing the system." Admiral Taravan's scales flushed with the deep purple of rage. "Guards, arrest the human delegation immediately." The security detail moved to comply, but Ambassador Mercer raised a hand. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "Are you threatening us?" the Admiral hissed. "Not at all," she replied calmly, "simply offering advice. You see, what you are witnessing is merely a demonstration, a proof of concept, if you will. The actual breach could occur anywhere, at any time, unless we reach an understanding." I watched this exchange with growing horror. The implications were staggering. If the humans could compromise the barrier at will, Taliskar was vulnerable for the first time in 2 millennia. What kind of understanding? I found myself asking, earning a glare from Admiral Taravan. Ambassador Mercer turned to me, her expression softening slightly. "A fair one, Analyst Peluvian. We humans have no interest in conquest. We seek alliance, not subjugation. But we have learned through painful experience that entering negotiations from a position of perceived weakness rarely ends well for us. So you commit an act of war instead." Admiral Taravan snarled. "No," she corrected, "we demonstrate capability." "There's a difference." The holographic display suddenly flashed with new alerts. The fluctuations in the barrier were intensifying, spreading across the equatorial region. "Stop this immediately," the Admiral demanded. Communications Specialist Patel touched a small device on her wrist. Done. As simply as that, the fluctuations ceased. The barrier stabilized, its quantum harmonics returning to normal patterns. The abruptness of the recovery was almost as shocking as the breach itself. "How?" I whispered. "How did you do it?" Dr. Khatri smiled. "Quantum entanglement disruption. Your barrier depends on perfectly synchronized quantum states across billions of particles. We introduced a cascading desynchronization effect." "Impossible," the Admiral insisted, though with noticeably less conviction. "Your species hasn't mastered quantum technology to that degree. Hasn't it?" Security Chief Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Or did you just assume we haven't based on superficial observations?" I suddenly remembered the anomalous energy signatures from their ship, the hull material that our scanners couldn't properly identify. We had dismissed these as curiosities, technological oddities from a primitive species. But what if they were deliberately designed to be misinterpreted? What if the humans had masked their true capanas behind a facade of technological backwardness? Admiral, I said quietly, I believe we should listen to what the ambassador has to say. He glared at me, all four eyes blazing with fury. You would have us negotiate with those who have attacked us? They haven't attacked us, I pointed out. They have demonstrated a capability, one that they immediately deactivated upon request. High Counselor Zevix's voice came unexpectedly over the communication system. Admiral Taravan, bring the human delegation to the council chamber immediately. This matter requires full council attention. The Admiral's scales rippled with suppressed emotion, but he bowed in formal acknowledgement of the order. As the council commands. As we made our way through the corridors of the Central Command Complex, I found myself walking beside Ambassador Mercer once more. You took an enormous risk, I said quietly. If the Admiral had responded differently, this could have ended in bloodshed. We calculated the risk, she replied. Your species values logic and demonstrations of strength. We provided both. But why? Why not simply approach us diplomatically? She gave me a sidelong glance. Would you have taken us seriously? Would your Admiral have seen us as equals rather than curiosities? I couldn't honestly say yes, and my silence was answer enough. In our brief history of interstellar contact, she continued, we have learned that technological superiority is often mistaken for moral superiority. Species who believe themselves advanced tend to patronize those they perceive as less developed. So you pretended to be less advanced than you are. Not exactly. Our ship is indeed propelled by what you would consider outdated technology. We simply omitted certain details about our other capabilities. Before I could respond, we arrived at the council chamber, an imposing space dominated by a circular table where the 12 members of the High Council conducted the most important business of our civilization. High Counselor Zevix occupied the central position, her ancient wizened form commanding respect despite her physical frailty. Ambassador Mercer, she greeted, her voice surprisingly strong, the council welcomes you despite the unusual circumstances of this meeting. Ambassador Mercer performed her curious bending gesture. High Counselor, thank you for agreeing to see us. I apologize for the dramatic introduction, but we felt it necessary to ensure our voice would be heard by compromising our planetary defenses. Counselor Drax, the military representative, asked sharply. By demonstrating a mutual vulnerability, Mercer corrected. Your quantum barrier has made you complacent. You believe yourselves invulnerable, and thus you see no need for genuine alliances, only subordinate relationships with those you deem inferior. A murmur ran through the council members. High Counselor Zevix raised a gnarled hand for silence. Explain your purpose here, Ambassador. What does humanity want from the Taliscarians? Partnership, Mercer replied simply. Equal partnership in the face of a threat that concerns us all. What threat? Admiral Taravan scoffed. The galactic hegemony has maintained peace for millennia. Dr. Khatri stepped forward. Peace within your known territories, Admiral. But the galaxy is vast, and there are regions you haven't explored, regions where we have encountered something disturbing. He activated a small projector, displaying a star map that showed regions far beyond hegemony space. Within the map, a shadowy area was marked with pulsing red indicators. 3 years ago, our long-range exploratory vessels detected unusual energy signatures from this region. We sent investigative teams, only one returned. The projection shifted to show a recording. The image quality was poor, distorted by interference, but it clearly showed a massive structure or perhaps entity moving against the backdrop of stars. It defied easy description, seeming to shift between solid and energy states, its form simultaneously organic and mechanical. We call them void walkers, Khatri continued. They appear to be a composite life form, part biological, part technological, and part something else. Something that interacts with space-time in ways we don't fully understand. And you believe these void walkers pose a threat? Counselor Vex, the scientific representative, leaned forward with obvious interest. We know they do, Security Chief Jackson answered grimly. They have consumed 3 uninhabited star systems in the past year alone. Their method is consistent, They envelop a star, somehow accelerate its nuclear processes, and harvest the resulting energy burst. The planets are stripped of resources during the process. A chill ran through me. If they targeted inhabited systems— Precisely, Ambassador Mercer nodded. We have been tracking their movement patterns. They are methodical, following stellar density gradients toward increasingly resource-rich regions, toward hegemony space. I realized aloud. Yes, our projections indicate they will reach your outer territories within 5 years, perhaps sooner if they detect the energy output from your quantum barrier. It's like a beacon. Admiral Taravan's posture had changed subtly, his professional skepticism giving way to genuine concern. If what you say is true, why not simply share this information? Why the elaborate deception? The attack on our defenses? Ambassador Mercer's expression hardened. Because we tried that approach with the Maxillian Confederacy. We provided data, samples, evidence, everything we had. They dismissed us as primitive alarmists and refused to prepare. 3 months ago, the Maxillian homeworld went dark. All communication ceased. Our scouts found nothing but a dead star and barren planets stripped of every valuable element. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. You breached our barrier, High Counselor Zevix said finally, to ensure we would take your warning seriously. Yes, Mercer acknowledged. And to demonstrate that we have technology valuable enough to make us worth allying with. We don't seek protection, High Counselor. We seek collaboration. Our quantum disruption techniques could be adapted to affect these voidwalkers, but we need your resources and knowledge to scale the technology appropriately. Counselor Drax scowled. Convenient story. Perhaps this is simply an elaborate conquest strategy. Dr. Khatri sighed. If conquest were our goal, we wouldn't be standing here talking. The fluctuations you witnessed were controlled, localized. We could have collapsed your entire barrier simultaneously if that had been our intention. I believed him. Something about the calm certainty in his voice, the lack of boasting or threat, convinced me he was speaking truth. Admiral Taravan. High Counselor Zevix turned to the military commander. Your assessment. The admiral was silent for a long moment, his scales shifting through patterns of conflicting emotions. Finally, he straightened to formal attention. The data presented appears credible, he admitted reluctantly, and the breach of the barrier, that alone warrants serious consideration. If the humans could accomplish this with a single vessel, these void walkers would likely find our defenses equally vulnerable. I stared at him in shock. I had expected continued resistance, not pragmatic acceptance. High Counselor, the Admiral continued, I recommend we establish a joint research initiative to verify the human data and develop countermeasures against both their quantum disruption technique and these alleged voidwalkers. Agreed, Zevix nodded. Analyst Peluvian, you will coordinate this initiative from our side. Me? I blinked, all 4 eyes in rapid succession. Yes, you have shown an open mind in this situation, while maintaining appropriate caution. Those qualities will be essential moving forward. Ambassador Mercer smiled, a genuine expression of satisfaction rather than her earlier diplomatic mask. A wise decision. Dr. Khatri will serve as our primary liaison, with full access to our research and technology. And just like that, my entire career path shifted. From analyzing defenses to helping forge an unprecedented alliance with a species that hours before I had considered primitive and unremarkable. The next several days passed in a blur of activity. The human delegation was rehoused in more suitable quarters, their status upgraded from diplomatic visitors to strategic allies. Khatri and his team set up a temporary laboratory where they began sharing their quantum disruption technology under careful supervision, of course. What amazed me most was not the technology itself, though it was indeed impressive, but the approach the humans took to scientific advancement, where Taliskarian research was methodical, incremental, and protocol-driven. The humans were wildly creative, making intuitive leaps and pursuing multiple approaches simultaneously. They embraced failure as a learning opportunity rather than a setback to be documented and avoided. You seem surprised, Dr. Khatri commented one evening as we reviewed test results together. By your methods? Yes, I admitted. They are chaotic. He laughed. Organized chaos, it's how we have survived. When you don't have thousands of years to perfect a technology, you learn to innovate quickly or perish. But the risks are necessary, he finished. Evolution rewards successful adaptation, not caution. I considered this. Is that why you disguised your true capabilities? As an adaptation? Partly. He set aside the datapad he'd been examining. Humanity has a complex history with technologically advanced civilizations encountering less developed ones. On our own world, such meetings rarely ended well for the less advanced society. So you assumed we would treat you as conquerors might. We assumed nothing. We prepared for multiple scenarios. The deception was a precaution that proved necessary when we observed how dismissively your admiral regarded us. I couldn't argue with that assessment. And now? Are you sharing everything with us? His expression grew serious. Everything relevant to the Void Walker threat, yes. But just as you surely maintain certain classified technologies, so do we. Trust builds gradually. Analyst Peluvian. Call me Zarax, I said impulsively. If we are to work together closely, formality seems counterproductive. He smiled. Liam. Then. Our work progressed rapidly after that. The initial breach of the quantum barrier had sent shockwaves through Talaskarian society, forcing a painful reevaluation of our perceived invulnerability. But the resulting mobilization of resources was impressive. Within weeks, we had adapted the human quantum disruption technology into a detection system capable of identifying the unique space-time distortions associated with Void Walker movement. And none too soon. Our long-range sensors detected the first Void Walker incursion into hegemony space 3 months after the human arrival. A distant, uninhabited star system at the very edge of our territory simply vanished from astronomical observation, its star's energy output spiking briefly before disappearing entirely. The council chamber was somber as we reviewed the data. It's happening faster than we projected, Ambassador Mercer said grimly. They are accelerating. How many of these entities are there? Councillor Vex asked. We have confirmed at least 7 distinct signatures, Security Chief Jackson replied. But there could be more. Their energy patterns occasionally overlap, making them difficult to distinguish. Admiral Taravan, who had become increasingly supportive of our joint efforts, studied the trajectory projections. They will reach the Kavadar system within 2 months at their current speed. That's our first populated outpost in that sector. We need to deploy the disruption field immediately, I said. The prototype has performed well in simulations. Simulations aren't reality, Dr. Khatri cautioned. We have never tested this against an actual Void Walker. We don't have time for perfect solutions. Ambassador Mercer stated firmly. We deploy what we have, learn from the results, and adapt. High Counselor Zevix nodded slowly. Agreed. Admiral Taravan, prepare a joint fleet. Our fastest vessels, armed with the prototype disruptors, plus whatever ships the humans can provide. Security Chief Jackson straightened. The UHA Defiant is already equipped with our latest quantum armaments. 2 more of our battle cruisers can be here within the week. The Admiral blinked in surprise. Battle cruisers? Your fleet contains such vessels? Jackson's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. Admiral, did you really think that little diplomatic ship was representative of our military capabilities? I had my suspicions, Taravan admitted, but battle cruisers suggest a significant force. We have been preparing for this threat longer than you have, Jackson replied simply. Preparations moved at a frenetic pace. After that, the joint fleet assembled in high orbit around Talaskar, 17 Talaskarian vessels, and 3 human ships that were indeed impressive battle cruisers, their sleek, predatory designs belying the primitive appearance of their diplomatic vessel. As senior coordinator for the initiative, I was assigned to the command ship alongside Admiral Taravan, Ambassador Mercer, and Dr. Khatri. The arrangement was unprecedented. Never before had non-hegemony personnel been granted such access to our military operations. The journey to the Kavadar system took 11 days at maximum subspace velocity. Throughout the voyage, we continued refining the quantum disruption field, incorporating new insights from the combined human-Talaskarian research team. The key, Dr. Khatri explained during one of our strategy sessions, is to precisely match the frequency of their space-time distortion and then generate an inverse wave pattern. Like noise-canceling technology, I suggested, having learned the human term for a similar concept. Exactly, but on a quantum level, affecting the fundamental forces they manipulate. Admiral Taravan, who had developed a grudging respect for human scientific creativity, nodded thoughtfully. "And if we succeed, what exactly will happen to the Voidwalker?" "In theory," Dr. Khatri spread his hands, "their cohesion will fail. The different components of their composite structure should separate and become vulnerable to conventional weapons." "In theory," the Admiral repeated dryly. "That's the nature of first contact with a new threat, Admiral," Ambassador Mercer pointed out. "Theoretical solutions applied with practical determination. Our sensors detected the Voidwalker as soon as we entered the Kavadar system. It was massive, far larger than the specimens recorded in the human data. Currently, it hovered near the system's sun, extending tentacle-like projections of energy into the star's corona. It's feeding," Security Chief Jackson observed from his position at the tactical station, "harvesting stellar material to fuel whatever process drives it." "Life signs?" Admiral Taravan asked. "Inconclusive," I reported, studying the readouts. "There are organized energy patterns that could indicate consciousness, but nothing recognizable as biological life as we understand it." "It hasn't reacted to our arrival," Dr. Khatri noted. "Either it doesn't perceive us as a threat, or it's too focused on feeding. Either way, we won't get a better opportunity," the Admiral decided. "Deploy the disruption field on my mark." The fleet moved into formation, a three-dimensional array designed to surround the entity with overlapping fields. The human vessels took the most vulnerable positions, closest to the Voidwalker, their more advanced shielding providing better protection against potential retaliation. "All ships report ready, Admiral," I announced, my voice steady despite the tension gripping my internal organs. Admiral Taravan took a moment to survey the tactical display, his four eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sign of intense concentration. Then, with characteristic decisiveness, he gave the command, "Mark." The disruption field activated simultaneously from all 20 ships, creating a quantum cage around the Voidwalker. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. The entity continued its feeding, seemingly unaffected. Then, slowly, it began to change. The tentacle-like projections retracted from the star. Its amorphous form became less stable, rippling with conflicting energy patterns. A high-pitched keening sound emanated from it, not through space but somehow directly through our communication systems. "It's working," Dr. Khatri whispered, his eyes fixed on the sensor readings. "The composite structure is destabilizing." But our success was short-lived. The Voidwalker suddenly contracted, compressing into a dense sphere of pulsating energy. Then, with explosive force, it expanded outward, a shock wave of distorted spacetime that slammed into our fleet. 3 Telescarian vessels vanished instantly, their molecular structures simply erased from existence. 2 more spun away, critically damaged. The human ships, with their more advanced shielding, weathered the blast better but still sustained significant damage. "Evasive maneuvers," Admiral Taravan shouted. "Recalibrate the disruption field." On the view screen, the Voidwalker had changed again. No longer amorphous, it now exhibited a crystalline structure, geometric and precise. Tendrils of dark energy extended from its central mass, probing toward our remaining ships. "It's adapting," I realized with horror. "Learning from our attack, then we learn faster," Ambassador Mercer said grimly. She turned to Dr. Khatri. "The resonance frequency, it shifted when the entity changed form." He nodded, fingers flying over the control panel. "Analyzing now. We need to match the new pattern." Security Chief Jackson's voice came over the comm system from the UHA, defiant. "We can't withstand another blast like that. Whatever you are going to do, do it quickly." I joined Dr. Khatri at the science station, our species' differences forgotten in the urgency of the moment. Together we isolated the new frequency pattern emanating from the Voidwalker. "There," I pointed to a recurring oscillation in the quantum signature. "That's the core frequency. Everything else is harmonic variation." "Good catch," he muttered, already programming the new parameters into the disruption field. "Admiral, we are ready to attempt a second deployment." The Voidwalker was moving now, advancing toward the habitable planets of the Kavadar system. Its pace was deliberate, unhurried, the confidence of a predator that fears no prey. "All remaining ships, realign for second deployment," Admiral Taravan ordered. "Focus fire on the central mass once the field activates." The surviving vessels moved into a new formation, compensating for our losses. This time, when the disruption field engaged, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void Walker's crystalline structure began to fracture, dark energy bleeding from the fissures like ichor from a wounded beast. Conventional weapons now, the Admiral commanded. A barrage of quantum torpedoes and energy weapons struck the weakened entity, penetrating deep into its core. The Void Walker convulsed, its structure collapsing inward. For a moment, it seemed to stabilize, gathering itself for another attack. Then the UHAA Defiant executed a maneuver I would have thought impossible, diving directly toward the wounded entity, weaving between the lashing tendrils of dark energy. At the last possible moment, it launched what appeared to be a simple projectile into the Void Walker's fractured core. Clear the blast radius. Security Chief Jackson's voice rang through the command center. All ships maximum distance now. Our fleet scattered, engines straining. Seconds later, the projectile detonated not with a conventional explosion, but with a rippling implosion that tore the very fabric of space-time. The Void Walker collapsed into the distortion, its mass and energy folding in upon itself until nothing remained but empty space. The silence that followed was profound. "What?" Admiral Taravan finally asked. "What was that weapon?" "Singularity bomb," Ambassador Mercer explained quietly. "It creates a momentary artificial black hole. Dangerous and unpredictable, which is why we didn't mention it earlier. A last resort. That seems like information that should have been shared," the Admiral said stiffly. "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "Just as we might have benefited from knowing about your prototype Nova inducer weapon before arriving." The Admiral's scales flushed with embarrassment. "A fair point." I looked from one to the other, suddenly understanding that both sides had been maintaining their own secrets, their own contingencies. Not out of malice, but from the deeply ingrained caution of species who had learned hard lessons about survival. "We won," I said, bringing the focus back to our achievement. "We destroyed a Void Walker. One of many," Dr. Khatri reminded us soberly. "And now they know we can hurt them. So they will adapt again," I acknowledged. "And we will adapt in response. Together," Ambassador Mercer added, looking pointedly at Admiral Taravan. He considered for a long moment, then inclined his head in agreement. "Together, with full information sharing moving forward." In the cycles that followed, that first victory proved to be merely the opening engagement in a prolonged conflict. The Void Walkers were numerous, intelligent and highly adaptive. Each encounter required new tactics, new applications of our combined technologies. But the alliance held firm, growing stronger with each shared triumph and sacrifice. Other species joined our coalition as the threat became more widely known: the reclusive Navorians, the Skalan horde, even the mechanical Mectroid. Ancient rivalries and prejudices didn't vanish, but they diminished in importance when faced with extinction. As for me, my perspective changed completely. Where once I had seen the quantum barrier as the pinnacle of security, I now understood it had been little more than an elaborate door, and any door can be knocked upon, regardless of its apparent strength. The humans taught us that true security comes not from isolation, but from connection, not from impenetrable walls, but from bridges built between different worlds, different perspectives, different approaches to the same fundamental challenges. Admiral Taravan eventually admitted this truth as well, though it took him considerably longer. On the 10th anniversary of first human contact, during a rare quiet moment between Void Walker incursions, he confided in me. "Do you know what my greatest failure was? Analyst Peluvian. Calling me analyst when I have been director for 3 years, I suggested dryly." He chuckled, a sound I'd seldom heard from him in our early years together. "No, it was believing that vulnerability was weakness. The barrier made us complacent, arrogant. We stopped innovating because we thought we'd achieved perfection, and the humans showed us otherwise." "They did indeed." He gestured toward the view screen, where Earth and Taliskar were displayed side by side, the dual capitals of our growing alliance. "By knocking on our door when everyone else was trying to break it down. A gentle tap that shook the foundations of our civilization." I mused. "The strongest walls in the galaxy fell," Admiral Taravan said with a wry twist of his mouth parts, "when a human knocked, not with force but with ingenuity. Perhaps that should be the motto of our alliance." And so it became,